On June 6th, 2023, my channel hit 1,000 subscribers. To celebrate this remarkable achievement, I decided to make a vase with 1,000 different pieces, or segments. I started out by ripping a bunch of strips out of walnut, maple, pecan, padauk, and oak into quarter-inch, half-inch, and inch-thick pieces. After that, it was time to break out the unusually expensive and relatively unnecessary Vase parallel clamps for my first of several glue-ups. Maybe I just don't know how to do things, but these clamps are always a challenge for me to use. I'm not sure what it is, they just always seem to get stuck and not work like I expect them to. The order in which I glued the pieces together was really random. I just mixed and matched until I got panels that were about 4.5 inches thick. I ended up with 6 of these panels. I used 34 of these strips in the initial glue up, meaning that the total number of segments so far is 34. We've got a ways to go. "34 does not equal 1,000, so I needed to cut these up again to make more pieces. Before doing that, I just whipped them through the planer really quickly to get some flat reference faces for my next step. Over at the bandsaw, I cut these things down the center. This bandsaw is a new bandsaw. I upgraded my 9-inch bandsaw to a slightly larger 10-inch one. And even though that sounds like a minimal change, it actually was a huge improvement on the last one, and I am really pleased with it. Resawing all these pieces at the bandsaw doubled the total number of my pieces, bringing the new total to 68. Once again, I used the planer to clean everything up and make it flat before laying everything out to apply glue. I'm using Titebond 2 for this glue up, mainly because it is wood glue, and I'm gluing pieces of wood together here, so it seemed like the right product to use. I used way more than was probably necessary, mainly because I wanted to make sure that every part of the surface was covered in glue. I just used my hand to distribute the glue before stacking them all up together. After covering the piece in clamps, I waited around for a couple hours for the glue to set up before removing the clamps once more. Now this is a great block of wood and can certainly be carved into a vase of some sort, but there's still one major issue. It currently is only 68 segments. So to fix this, I cut the block in the only direction I hadn't cut it yet. Using the bandsaw, I sliced and diced until I had 15 thin slices of wood made up of 68 pieces each, for a grand total of 1,020 individual chunks of wood in this project. This is a tool you haven't seen on my channel before. This is my brand new drum sander, and I used it to flatten the pieces and remove the saw marks left behind by the bandsaw. This thing cost me a fortune, but it's opened up a whole new world of possibilities and precision, especially for things like segmenting and the utilization of small and thin pieces of wood. I'm really excited to use it for some new projects in the future, and to make it worth the hefty price tag. For the final glue up, I used a very generous amount of glue, because gluing end grain to end grain is a very controversial topic on the internet, and I wanted to be safe and make sure that the bond was as strong as possible. This was actually a rather difficult glue up because 15 layers of generous glue spreading led to everything wanting to slip and slide around, and it proved to be rather difficult to line everything up to apply the clamps. This time I didn't use those silly Vase clamps, and that made it a little bit of a smoother process. Now to turn this chunk of wood into a vase. The first thing I did was drill a 1-inch diameter hole in the center of it. This will eventually hold a glass insert that will hold water and flowers without doing any damage to the wood. Gluing in that insert will be the very last step of this project. Now I didn't actually film it, but my small drill press only drilled in about 2 inches into this block, which meant I had to come back with a hand drill and a longer bit to extend the hole all the way down to roughly 6 inches. This was my second time ever using an angle grinder, and my first time using it to carve anything. I picked this thing up from Harbor Freight on sale for about $30. The carving disc actually cost double what the tool itself cost, but I've got to say, it was well worth it. This is a Kutzall disc, and I've heard that they last a very long time. I think they come in like 3 flavors: medium, coarse, and very coarse. I got the medium just because I really have no idea what I'm doing and it seemed like a pretty suitable option. While carving, I would from time to time wish that I had purchased a little bit more of an aggressive disc, but it probably actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise because it would have been very easy to get carried away and carve away too much with a faster cutting disc. I just aimlessly carved until the thing started to look like a vase. The angle grinder left the surface pretty smooth and even, but my lack of skill and technique with the angle grinder meant that there were still some bumps and lumps that had to be dealt with. So I put some 80 grit sandpaper in my cordless sander and gently massaged the vase just like a baker would massage the slices of bread he's cut before putting them in boxes. Now I only showed about 8 seconds of me sanding, but in reality this took about an hour and a half to get everything smooth and even. This next part is something that I don't necessarily regret, but I don't think I would do it again. I decided to add some character by carving in a bunch of little divots on the side of the vase. So, I marked out where I wanted the divots to be with a pencil, and then I came back through with this handy dandy little cordless rotary tool and carved them out. This took a long time, and off camera I had to come back through and sand each of the individual little cutouts. And it ended up just taking a really long time for something that really doesn't change how the vase looks very much. I got this finish sprayer recently, and I have quickly become a big fan of spraying finishes rather than brushing them on. Not only does the finish go on really smoothly and easily, but it also gives me a great opportunity to potentially inhale harmful chemicals. The goofy thing about spraying small projects like this is that the setup and cleanup takes way longer than the actual spraying part. The actual spraying takes like no time. It's wonderful. When I was gluing in the glass insert, I forgot to start the camera for the squeezing out of the epoxy, so that was just a representation of what it was probably like. This is just 5-minute epoxy that I had kicking around, and it actually worked really well to hold the insert in place. I just spread the epoxy all around the tube, and then slowly inserted it with a twisting motion to make sure it got distributed all around. I cleaned up the excess glue with a rag, and then it was time to take some pictures. I tried to get all fancy with a lazy Susan, but ended up just looking and feeling very silly instead. So here are some normal pictures. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the 1,000 people who have subscribed. If I happen to hit 10,000 subscribers, I will do a project with 10,000 segments. Have a great day.